Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photo chat live stream where we come together as a community and talk about photography. And as always, I like the audience to drive the conversation. And if you have any questions or any topics you'd like to talk about, just leave it in the chat section, and I will do my best to answer them or give my opinion. Um, and also, I always like to let you guys know what I've been up to and give you a few updates. I guess for those of you that have been following me closely, you know that my mom went to the hospital last week, and she was released this week, and she's recovering well. So hopefully everything will go in that direction. We expect it. We expect it to. No reason it wouldn't. So I'm very happy about that. So I'm in a very good mood today, and it's been it's been a little bit taxing on my time though, of course, because I have to go over and take care of her almost every day and run her errands and just keep her company more or less because she can't really leave the house on her own. But that's the good news, and you know, just downside, I haven't had a chance to go out and do much photography. I got out yesterday for a bit and did some with a friend of mine, viewer Sandy, who is avid birder and also an OM system photographer. So that's initially how we met. Was I helped her out with some of her camera settings and things a couple of years ago, and we've been kind of in touch on and off ever since. But more recently, I discovered that she was an avid birder. So she showed me a place yesterday where right now we have, I guess, warblers kind of migrating through our area now. And there's a particular spot that they tend to show up. So got some decent shots yesterday. It was very, very challenging. Warblers, they're these little tiny birds. They're like this big, uh, and um, and they don't stand in one place for more than a second. I mean, they just hop around left and right, all over the place, and they're usually in the brush, right? Or, and all the leaves are filled out right now. We're towards the end of spring, and so they're really, really hard to spot. And this location uh, was very, very challenging light. I mean, I was shooting at like ISO between 8,000 and 12,800 most of the time. Even when I could drag my shutter speed down to like 1/640th of a second, it was pretty brutal. For bird on a stick shots, I lowered it as low as I could possibly make it and still feel comfortable. Because if you set it too slow, the birds twitch a lot, move around a lot. You'll get motion blur, and you set it too fast, and you're going to be way up there and high ISO range again. So it was tough, very challenging, but very enjoyable. And I'll share a few images that I took yesterday from that with my OM1 Mark 1 and 300mm f4 Pro. Also, I pre-ordered the Panasonic Lumix L10, the new compact quote-unquote camera. Uh, and I was able to, I was able to get a pretty good deal on it. I mean, I paid the full list price, but by good deal, meaning I had over $100 in like cash back, sitting waiting to be used, and I got additional cash back on top of that for some other things. So I ended up paying $13.40, I believe, off the. I got about $150 off with all the cash back and things that I did. So got a good deal, and I think I just Googled, how are the pre-orders going, and apparently a lot of places are already canceling their pre-orders because they got more pre-orders than they got cameras to deliver. So it seems to be doing well, and take that with a grain of salt. That's just Google AI telling me that. But B&H and Adorama have them still available. So I have my B&H affiliate link down below if you're interested in getting one for yourself or pre-ordering one for yourself. And when that comes in, I'm going to compare it directly against my current compact cameras, which are the LX100 Mark II and my Leica Deluxe. Now I set them up here on a bracket because I'm going to do some side-by-side comparisons between these two cameras because you know, just long story short, there's virtually no difference in image quality. Virtually none. And I'll show you one comparison I've done already. But the main difference between the two is really the user interface. This has a much nicer EVF for many people. I'm fine with either one, but some people found the one on the LX100 a little bit, you know, tearing, or, you know, they can't use it basically. But I seem to be fine with it, but the OLED display solves all of that. And you know, and then of course the LX100 has a ton more controls and buttons and a lot more features, you know, 4K photo mode, you know, focus stacking, and you know, some other things off the top of my head I can't think of because I don't really use them too much in this format. When I take a camera out like this, you know, it's just a point and shoot, really. You know, high quality point and shoot, but essentially just a point and shoot camera. So what I'm excited about for the L10 is, of course, you know, the extra megapixels, but the subject detect autofocus and some of the video features. Even though I'm not really a videographer and I've been completely content with the video I get from these cameras, it'll be fun to kind of expand on that a little bit on the video side. And I understand that the camera is substantially larger than these, relatively speaking. I mean, it's not a big camera, but it is certainly larger than these. Like they say, it's close to size of an S9. But the other thing the L10 brings to the table that was somewhat limiting with this one is the tilting screen, right? These screens don't tilt. They're just right in here, and time to time that has made it a little bit awkward for me in photography. I would say, you know, 80-90% of the time I could care less about the tilt screen, but you know, there are times when you want to kind of get down low, or you know, an awkward position sometimes, particularly in close-up and macro photography, because this does have close-up macro quote-unquote capability. It has been a little awkward in those situations, so I'm excited about the new Panasonic L10, and you know, I did a poll, and I'll share that with you on that. Actually, someone told me I can add a poll here. I'll just add a poll here in the stream directly. Crap, where is that? Oh, here it is. I don't know what to ask. Do I think the L10 is going to be a success, or are you going to buy one? Because the camera is really, it's not for a lot of people. I mean, honestly, if you already have a decent camera, you don't really need an L10, right? So I think a better question to ask is, do you like the L10? And I don't know. Let's just, I don't know why I'm overthinking it. I'll just say, are you going to buy the Panasonic L10? We'll just make it simple. And I'm going to add one more option, maybe. Okay. So there's a quick little poll, but let me go ahead and share with you the poll that I have so far. And it looks like what I asked here is, what do you think of the Panasonic L10? Vote and leave a comment about what you like or dislike. So 13% said love it and getting one. This is out of 127 votes. 57% said it's nice, but not for me. 24%, that's pretty high numbers, say it could have been better. And then 6% said that, it's dead on arrival. So it's a very small number here, 127 votes, but I think we can kind of get an idea of where this is going. And as I suspect, love it and getting one, really this is probably a second camera for most people, right? And I would think that's about right. Probably only 10 to 15% of people that already have a camera will have the budget to get this as a second camera and enjoy it, right? I don't think many people will buy this as their first and only camera, though that may be the case. But there is a lot of competition at this price point of $1,500. And then nice, but not for me, right? That makes sense, right? Because like I said, I think a lot of people already have a very competent camera and, just don't really have a need for an L10. I was on the fence for a whole 24 hours because it was released or it was announced. And I said, oh, that's pretty nice. That's going to, it's a real nice upgrade to the LX100 Mark II. So I was more in the nice but not for me category. And then the next day I thought, and then I ended up pre-ordering was, I think I'll really use this camera and it'll be a really nice camera to have, as a second camera when I go out, because a lot of times when I go out and I do my birding with my 300mm f4, it's inconvenient to swap lenses and put, say, the 12 to 45. And sure, I could carry the OM3 with me with the 12 to 45 as a second camera, but it remains to be seen how much bulkier that really is. But it's also a little bit of gas too, right? Or FOMO, fear of missing out. So I'm not like super excited to get the camera. Like, I can't wait to get my hands on it, but I am happy and I don't think I'll have any regrets. And to that end, I can always sell it later, although I have trouble selling cameras. As you can see from the shelf behind me, I have a hard time selling and trading cameras because every time I do, I regret it. Like I still regret selling my Panasonic S5 and my S1R. Those are wonderful cameras, and I still regret that. But to that end, let me know what you guys think in the poll, and we'll catch up later on that. But let me go ahead into the chat section and see where everybody's at. If there's any questions to start, or and greetings. Hello, Jeff. Good to see you. And David, good to see you. Henning, always good to see you. And oh my goodness, Robin Wong, how are you? I've just finished a full day shoot. Now doing the editing, shall be listening to you while I go through the images. And you're awesome, Robin. Thank you so much for popping into my chats time to time. It's really very inspiring to both getting people excited about photography again. The shutter therapy, so to speak. And there's so much truth in that because when I went out with Sandy yesterday for the birding, she was showing me this app, and she was talking about the birding, and she really knows her birds, right? She can hear the bird's song and identify it. And some birds have multiple different songs, and she knows when they're doing their thing. But she was showing me something. She goes, I know this is so silly, and I don't mean to just bore you with all that. I said, no, this is awesome, because honestly, isn't everything we do really kind of silly, right? As hobbies in general, right? But for photography, right? If I take a picture of a bird, I could go online and find something 10 times better than I could ever do. So why am I bothering? It's not about the final result, right? It's about the process and the journey and just enjoying your time. The shutter therapy, as Robin always calls it. That's why we do this. And when I look at a picture that I took you know, I'm my own biggest critic, right? But at the same time, when I do take a picture that I really like, even though it's, you know, marginal at best in terms of quality, right? Or ranking, uh, I think about how I felt when I took that picture, what I did to get that picture, and the reward and the you know, the effort and the reward that I got out of it, of capturing an image. And that's why I do this. You get sort of a little bit of a, you get something you took a picture of and you can be proud of, uh, in your own way and at your own level. Because it doesn't matter what level of photography you're at, you're always never going to be happy with your image, and there's always going to be somebody better at it. You know, um, with very very few exceptions, I guess. But yeah, that's why I do it. Is I just enjoy the craft and the learning process, and going out there and just shooting. So I encourage everyone, you know, if you enjoy photography, just go out there and shoot, and don't worry about the final results so much. You know, just enjoy the process and getting out some fresh air, enjoying nature. In my case, it's like I love birding and nature walks and things like that, and learning about the world that we live in, and how we share our world with many other living creatures, right? From the very smallest, you know, bacteria up to, you know, the largest animals. So, you know, and photography in general, no matter what genre you're in, whether it's street photography or, you know, architectural or, you know, wildlife, macro. Um, yeah, I think it requires just a little bit of curiosity about your subject, right? And learning about the world that you live in. So it's a great learning experience, or it can be, and it's very rewarding. From the technical standpoint, it can be rewarding in that, you know, you've mastered a technique, or you've nailed a technique, or just capturing something new. Like you know, Ethan sent me a message the other day on Instagram that he captured uh, a new bird in his backyard, one that's never been there before. And you know, I guess it's a relatively common bird. It was a thrasher of some kind, but still, it was new to him, right? And I've seen, you know, when I captured a waxwing in my backyard, or a flicker, they're very common birds, but I never see them in my backyard. But once I captured a flicker in my backyard one time, and I was so excited. It was a terrible shot. I probably deleted it already, but I was so excited to capture that image, uh, and you know, just having a lot of fun. So it's a great hobby to get into. I think if you're on the fence about it, you should just go out, even with your cell phone, whatever camera you have in hand. You know, that little Kodak's, whatever that thing is that Robin loves so much. uh, and many people, because it's a sellout apparently. I think, you know, it's something I think you'll enjoy, and it's a great community as well, especially Micro Four Thirds community. But the photography community in general is uh, is amazing, and you get to meet a lot of new and interesting people from all different walks of life, and it's just awesome. Anyway, so I'm in a good mood today, as you can tell, as opposed to when I streamed last week, when things were a little bit less so. But anyhow, and thank you for the audio video check. And good morning, Gordon. And thank you, Jeff. She is doing well. And hello, Serge. Good to see you. And ATR Bear, good morning. And thank you, Henning. Yes, my mom is on her way to good, solid recovery. And yes, on the Panasonic L10, there is no image stabilization on the sensor. It's a fixed sensor. And the image stabilization, there is image stabilization in the lens, so OIS, or optical image stabilization, which is more than good enough for photography, right? Which, you know, it is really a photographer's camera. It's not really a videographer's camera. So I'm pretty content with that. I know some have expressed, like Marco said, that that's kind of a deal breaker for them, not having any kind of image stabilization. And I think for photography it's fine. In fact, image stabilization has never been a deal breaker for me when it comes to photography. It's really nice to have, particularly when you're shooting with the 400 millimeter equivalent. I'm sorry, not equivalent, but at 400 millimeters on Micro Four Thirds. It's nice to stabilize the image as you're trying to frame things and look at things. But generally speaking, if you just use the rule of double your focal length. So if you're shooting at 25 millimeters, just shoot at 1/50th of a second, and most of the time you won't have any image blur, or your camera will not be susceptible to handshake or blur caused by you holding the camera and the camera itself. That said, there are times when you certainly need very, very fast shutter speeds, and IBIS becomes even less important at that point. For example, in birding, if you're shooting at 1/2000th, 1/4000th of a second, you really don't need any image stabilization for that shot, right? The image stabilization is nice when you're looking through the viewfinder, because it just, instead of everything being all jittery, while you're looking at it, you can stabilize things and frame things a lot easier. But it's not a deal breaker for me most of the time. I would say 99.9% of the time, I could probably live without IBIS. But that said, 99% of the time, I would love to have it, right? And that's just where I am. Uh, but a lot of people, it's a deal breaker, right? And I get that, especially for videographers, and people that want to vlog and they want stable footage, in-body stabilization, on the sensor, certainly makes a very big difference. And JP McCormick says, the L10 seems bloated in size and functions, in my opinion. It's certainly not a pocketable camera. I'm waiting for a TG8, yes. So yeah, it's not pocketable. I mean, even the LX100 and this Deluxe 8, these are not pocketable cameras, right? It cracks me up when people say I forget who said it, but they said they could put this in their back pocket. I'm like, oh my God, how big are your pockets, You could put this in your coat pocket, but it's not comfortable. You got this big heavy thing in your coat pocket. I use straps on all of mine. A lot of people just use a wrist strap. I prefer a full shoulder strap. Small ones, I have very thin ones for these, less than 1 inch. They're very, very thin, and that's more than good enough, because when I go out in the field, I know that some people like to be a little more discreet, particularly in street photography with their cameras. I just own it. I go out, I have the camera hanging over my shoulder, and I'm a photographer, and if I want to do some street photography, I'm not going to surprise anybody, and just whip out a camera and take a picture, right? If they're aware of their environment at all, and everyone should be aware of their surroundings, just for safety reasons. But uh, I'm not going to surprise anybody that I have a camera. So maybe it eases them into it when I'm taking photos on the street. But I know some areas are not so friendly. People can get pretty nasty here when you're taking pictures, even if they're caught in the frame inadvertently. I've had experiences like that where I'm not even taking a picture of that person, or that I got accused of taking pictures of kids one time. That's not what I'm doing at all. And yeah, I've gotten some flack for that in public. Um, but that's, anyway, I don't want to discourage anybody from street photography. It's a lot of people really enjoy it and are much better at it than I am, of course, particularly when going out in the field. I guess it has something to do with your demeanor and body language, all of that good stuff. But just be conscious of the local laws and people's privacy when you go out and shoot. your street photography, and you'll be fine. And Adam says it's a struggle to see the niche it fills. Not small, no IBIS, no interchangeable lens, LUTs and phase detect, no IBIS. Sorry, it scrolled up on me. Slow mechanics on the lens, not sure what need it fills, nice appearance. Okay, so my internet. I got to talk to Marco about this. Let me know if the audio video is still good, but I'm getting some really bad pixelation and disconnects here. So yeah, this to me is sort of like is the glass half full or is it half empty, right? And everything Adam points out here is absolutely true. It's not a small camera. Being bigger than even the Deluxe 8 here, and there's no IBIS, which I just talked about, but that could be easily a deal breaker for people. And the slow mechanics on the lens. So I just watched Chris Nichols' review on this camera. Of course, I watched 3 or 4 other ones, including, of course, our friend Emily, who I would say is tied with Robin Wong in terms of the happiest people in photography and the most enthusiastic, at least on camera, right? In my heart, I'm as enthusiastic as anyone, but I don't always show it. But, since Chris Nichols is fresh in my mind, from Petapixel, he pointed that out as well, that the slow mechanics of the lens, which is certainly the case on the same as my LX100 and Deluxe 8, where it does take a little time to power up and have the lens extend from an off state. And your only option is to leave the camera on all the time, but his argument was now the lens is protruding out all the time, and it's not, it's maybe not the most robust construction, right? If you bump it, you could knock it out of alignment or even break it. And I get that, but for me, photography is partially about, well, not photography, but when you have a camera and you use a camera, it's really about knowing its strengths and weaknesses, right? And Adams pointed out all of the weaknesses here, or not all, but some of the more critical ones. And if I know the camera's going to power up slow, right, then I'm going to try and anticipate a little more when I need to have the camera on and ready. It's just part of the fun or process. For me, it's fun, but part of the process of doing the photography. If it's lacking in-body stabilization, again, that's part of the process and part of the challenge and fulfillment and enjoyment of, the doing photography and going out and taking pictures. So I look at all of the limitations as not only challenges, but challenges to overcome and get a rewarding image and enjoy that part of it. Because every camera has its limitations and challenges, right? And these limitations, the slow startup, the slow lens in terms of zooming in and out, these are limitations that are not deal breakers for me and are just part of the charm of that camera, if I want to put it the nicest way possible, right? And to kind of address maybe his question is not sure what need it fills or what niche it feels. And I think I did touch on it briefly in the beginning when I said this is not for everybody. As the poll also indicated, it's nice, but not for me, right? And the niche that I think it fills really is just a little travel camera. You know, what options are there out there right now? The X100, series in general, um, the Canon G7X Mark III, but that has no EVF. The Canon, whatever that Canon is that Emily loves so much, but that has a much slower lens. Uh, Arguably the same size sensor, right? It is slightly smaller, but so is the L10 in the sense that they're cropping in anyway. But there's that Canon something V1 is it called? And I'm not sure that even has an EVF. Maybe it does. I don't know. The camera didn't interest me at all for whatever reason. Uh, and it's the same thing as why does the L10 interest me? Because in terms of practical use as a tool, it doesn't offer me anything I can't already do in an already relatively compact system, right? So it's not really filling a niche. I think it's just, it's not filling a niche that's any different than the other cameras I've mentioned here with the in the compact segment or relatively compact segment, small camera segment, we'll just call it. A lot of people, when they think about compact cameras, they think about pocketable like RX100 or uh, the little Canon ELPH cameras, things like that that you can actually put in your shirt pocket, right? This is certainly bigger than that. This is a premium compact market, right? What niche did the premium compact market ever fill, in the past? Especially, now that cell phones are so good. Like someone in my camera club mentioned about some new project Indigo for their cell phone, and I saw a few sample images, and it's pretty impressive what it does. It uses a lot of computational photography. Of image stacking, basically, like we have our high-res shot mode in our cameras or HDR, but it's doing it in a more natural and more uh, deliberate way by taking multiple images, not like just bracketing ±2 or ±5. Uh, it's doing a lot more than that, right? Than just HDR. So, and I think it's, and I haven't tried the new iPhone, whatever, but yeah, the images look nice. They really do. And I think for just a point and shoot camera, most people can just use their cell phone, and many do. And that the cell phone market is just taken away, honestly, the compact market, the premium compact market, and a good chunk of the regular camera market, right? Interchangeable lens camera market. So I think you Adam's Adam has asked and answered the question directly. What niche does it fill? It's a niche camera, so it's filling that niche of people that want a compact, capable camera. I don't think the IBIS and the other things, they're certainly not deal breakers for me. I'm a little excited to try the LUTs too, although I'd rather post-process my images. I like to keep them semi-realistic and leaning towards the more realistic side than a processed side. Although I do tend to overprocess my images a lot. But I'm vaguely curious about the LUT system, but yeah, Adam is certainly not alone. Like, who is this camera for, and what's this camera? What is it for, right? And I just see it as sort of a nice little compact camera, like the Q3 series from Leica, or the X100. Why is that camera? Who is that camera for? The X100 series. I guess they're on the VI or the X100 6. That's a fixed fixed focal length camera. You know, that's even worse. I would never buy a fixed focal length camera like a Q3 or an X100. It's just way too limiting. At least this one zooms from relatively wide 24 millimeters out to telephoto of 70 or semi-telephoto of 75 millimeters. And then you can crop a little bit on top of that. So I just could not buy a fixed focal length camera. If the L10 came out with a fixed focal length, yeah, no way. No way would I get it. That's my deal breaker, fixed focal length. So that said, watch me a year from now buy a fixed focal length camera. Who knows, you know, I'm fickle that way when it comes to camera. And Coxcom says, not going to buy an L10. There's far too much emphasis on getting the latest and best gear with loads of functions that may never get used. I'm quite happy with my EM1X and OM1. Absolutely. So again, this camera is, I think, a great second camera, and then people that will never need more than what it can offer, you know, working that focal length. But a lot of enthusiasts, you know, no way an enthusiast photographer would buy this. Like, if they have an OM1, they're not going to trade all that in and go buy an L10. There's just no way, right? But if somebody has an LX100 or an X100V or, you know, name that compact camera, I could see them trading it in to get this one. Certainly. It's certainly better than just about everything out there, in my opinion. I can't think off the top of my head what I would rather have more in this particular market. Like, I would not want the RX100, whatever variation. It's just way too expensive. Way too expensive. And a great alternative to the RX100 is the little Sony ZV-1s, right? Those to me are the replacement for the RX100. I don't know why nobody really looks at it that way, but I've always considered the Sony ZV-1s to be a replacement for the RX100. And those can be had for under $1,000. I've seen them as low as $500 or $600. You used to be able to get them used for about $300-400. I don't know if that's the case now, but you know, the ZV-1, you know, those cameras just, you know, there's no EVF on the ZV-1. The RX100 is too expensive. The X100, I just looked at one on eBay. It's like $2,600, and I don't know what prices people are getting them for, but it's certainly more than the L10 by a pretty good margin. I might be forgetting some other ones. What is that Canon? The Canon that Emily likes so much? I think that's under $1,000. That would be a decent alternative, but I gotta look at it. Maybe I bought the wrong camera. Is it the Canon V1? Canon V1, $849. So it's $1,180 off. Yeah, my internet is really dragging here. I'm sorry about that, guys. I'm pretty sure it's my router. He's just starting to get a little finicky. But shoot, I can't get it to work. Sorry. And this side towards screen says, at first the L10 looked great. I read the specs. I was like, okay. Then I saw no IBIS, tilt screen, and no ND built-in filters. I was like, wait, this should have been released first over the S9. Okay, so no IBIS, but it does have a tilt screen. To me, that's a plus. And then no ND filters built in. I don't get the thing with ND filters being built in. I think if this were a video-centric camera, that would be a big minus, right? But it's not. It's a photographer-based camera. But, you know, who am I to say, right? I learned a long time ago that what seems trivial and minor to me can be a huge deal to other people. So I don't want to criticize someone else's opinion about lacking something that I could care less about, right? But no ND filter. And not many cameras have built-in ND filters. Videographer cameras do, but if there are other cameras out there that have it, I think maybe the RX100 has one. I can't remember. I know there have been some photocentric cameras that have them. The size is not very pocketable unless you have cargo pants. Yes, that I agree. And that was not really a deal breaker because I'm already used to just strapping, you know, shoulder strapping these guys anyway. As well as shoulder strapping my OM3. And that was my biggest hesitation is, where's my OM3? I have it here, ready to go, I believe. Yeah. So this was my biggest hesitation. So here's the OM3. I happen to have the 12 to 45 on here because I wanted to use some fancy, I have like kaleidoscope and swirly vortex filters that I like to put on and play with. But if I put a lot of times I go out with my 14 to 42 kit lens, right? I mean, it's almost as fast as the 12 to 40 f4 Pro. And I have, of course, my polarizer on here. But this is amazing. It has essentially the same focal range, right? Zoom range. And certainly as capable on the photography side as the L10. In my opinion, way more capable than the L10 in terms of photography because I can slap a 300mm f4 on this and shoot at 50 frames per second with continuous autofocus. You can't do that with the L10, right? But I'll be curious to see when because the OM3 is what, 500 grams without the lens, right? So it's really the same size and weight as the L10. And then I add maybe 150 to maybe 200 grams here for a lens. So then now it's like 40% heavier. But when we're talking about such small numbers to begin with, when you're starting at 500 grams and going to 600 or 700, it's not that big a deal, right? But I've also added a grip on here. This adds about another 100 grams. So, I don't know. You know, it remains to be seen if I pick up the L10 over my OM3, you know, over time. It remains to be seen. Because I just love this camera so much that I'm second guessing my decision to buy an L10. You know, what am I going back to what niche does it fill for me? What does it do for me? Really nothing that I can't do with my OM3. It's just gas, I guess. Gas and FOMO plays a lot into my purchasing decisions. And John, good to see you. Sunny UK, wow. It's not sunny there very often, is it? And I'm not in a race for the L10. I'm addicted to lenses much more than cameras. And not being able to change, I'm out, yes. Plus missing IBIS, plus it's definitely not a small device. Yep. And good day, Katzen. Good to see you. And sorry for abbreviating your name there, but that's pretty long. Katz Ennelenbog. Katz Ennelenbog. Katz E. I'm sorry, I can't do it. The L10 doesn't have IBIS. Wow, this is a recurring theme, right? No IBIS. But don't forget, it does have optical stabilization, which is not too shabby. And my OM3 is serving me well for an everyday camera. Absolutely. I know, right? My OM3 is awesome. This OM3, I'm never parting with this. This is, what did Emily call it? Her camera for life or something like that. This is a lifer, just like my Pen F. This has replaced the Pen F in just about every way. Other than the aesthetics, you know, I still like shooting with the OG, so to speak, right? The original Pen F, not the film, but the digital. I still like shooting with it, but because it's not as capable as this, and this to me is just as gorgeous. I don't take the Pen F out very often, but I'm never selling it. Never ever selling it. And good morning, Heather. Good to see you. Such great news. Your mom is recovering. Thank you so much. And good morning, Roger. Good to see you. And Robin says, I think the reason why people complain about the L10 not having 5-axis image stabilization is because the S9 that has a full frame sensor has 5-axis IBIS. So why can't Micro Four Thirds? Oh, that's interesting. I thought the S9 didn't have image stabilization. Actually, it does, doesn't it? That's a good point. I guess if we had to get technical, and this is, and we have to blame the engineers when they designed this camera, is because the compact lens that they used doesn't project the full image circle to cover the entire sensor, adding image stabilization inside, right, would require a lens that had an even larger image circle, or they would have to crop more into the sensor. So instead of being a 20 megapixel, which is already down from 26, it would probably be back to 17 or even 16 megapixels. So I think from a technical standpoint, that's why it doesn't have image stabilization, and it was a deliberate choice not to put it in the camera. Because I don't think there's a technical limitation or an engineering limitation, because like you say, the S9 has it. But I think it was more of a technical limitation with the lens that they chose to use to keep the overall body compact. Because if you were to try to put a larger lens on there, or let me rephrase that, if you were to try to put a lens on there that did cover the full image circle and have decent image quality and have that zoom range and have the aperture that it does starting at 1.7, it'd be a significantly larger lens, right? So take, for example, the 14 to 42 kit lens. Let's extend it out. Okay, and then let me take it off. So here we have an f3.5 to 5.6 here, and an f4 fixed lens. And then, as you know, the 2.8 lens is even a little bit larger, maybe a centimeter in any direction, right? Or less than a centimeter in any direction for an f2.8. These are lenses that project a full image circle. So if they wanted to keep the lens size about the same, they'd have to go with this, but it'd have to be a smaller lens. I'm sorry, slower aperture. And I don't know if that's a compromise, you know, that's the compromise they wanted to take. They'd rather lose the image stabilization than use a slower lens. You know, this lens, even though it's an f4, the image quality out of the Pro lens, the weather sealing, all of that good stuff, and that's something I want to come back to. You know, this is an amazing lens, and this is pretty much glued to my OM3. Well, I hate saying glued because that's not really true, right? I mean, I'm not talking about literally, I'm talking about figuratively speaking. I switch between these two lenses all the time. If I'm just going out kind of a casual thing, I'll take this one out. If I want to make sure I get the best image quality, particularly if I'm going to do image focus stacking and high-res shot mode and things like that, I prefer to take this lens out. Or if I like to use, and that's the main reason I bought this lens, is because I can get, you know, fancy filters for it, like my kaleidoscope, my star effect, and my vortex filters, you know, on here. It's hard to find them in a thread size for this tiny lens. And that's kind of what motivated me to get this one, because I missed using all those filters, or I would miss out on using all those filters I like to have fun with. So, because if you look at, let me open this up. I don't know if anybody cares about this. But yeah, the 14 to 42 kit lens is about the same size as the lens on the LX100, which would be the same as the L10. In fact, this is even a little bit larger when it's extended out. Okay, but I think that's the reason, is they didn't want a big honking lens on the front of it, so they just said, let's not bother with the IBIS. But what was the thing? Oh, weather sealing. I'm surprised that hasn't come up yet, that nobody said weather sealing is a deal breaker. Because the X100 has weather sealing. I don't know about the Canon V1, but the X100 has weather sealing. The number 6 does. But the L10 does not. No one's brought that up. I'm very surprised. Of course, now I'll probably be flooded in chat section. What? No weather sealing? Definitely canceling my pre-order. Okay. And Katzen says, I mean, with the A9 III, with most of my photos, I average 135,000. Really? I can't imagine why you would need a shutter speed that fast. Other than I do know some people that like to photograph drag races, and you know how fast the wheels are spinning on the car. They like to freeze the action of that and show, you know, the oblong tires, or freeze, you know. I have seen applications like that. I'm not aware of other applications though. Just because I haven't, no one's introduced me to where. I'm curious, Katzen, why do you use 1/35,000th of a second? I'll have to try some photography that would benefit from that. I'm sure there is. I'm just, you know, that's just outside of my scope of knowledge. Okay, and let's see. John says, got a new Emzico 100 to 400 Mark II, which gives me a bit more flexibility over my 300 Pro. Yes. So I do see a lot of photographers in the field that I'm out there with my 300 and teleconverter, but some people have the 100 to 400, and you know, ultimately it's actually a little bit lighter. I don't know what the specs are, but yesterday Sandy had the 100 to 400, and I had the 300 f4 with the 1.4 and the lens collar on it. So the lens collar and the teleconverter add a little extra weight, a few hundred grams there. You really have to pixel peep to see the difference, and you can still use a teleconverter with the 100 to 400. The main difference between the two lenses, and I wouldn't say image quality is one of them. That's not a huge difference, if any, okay? The main difference between the two lenses is in the autofocusing speed from point A to point B. So you know, the only application that would really come into play is when a bird is flying straight towards you, right, at a very high rate of speed, like these small warblers. Theoretically, the 300 millimeter will be able to keep up focus with a bird or subject coming towards you faster or going away from you, or acquiring focus faster when something's kind of far away. You can point your camera up, bip, as soon as you push the shutter button, I mean, it locks on much, much faster, right? That's the only difference. The only caveat to using a non-pro lens, for example. I don't think optically you're missing out much, honestly. Because I tried the 100 to 400 versus the 300 millimeter f4 when I was making my own purchasing decision. And the versatility of the 100 to 400 being able to zoom in and out was certainly a huge advantage at the time. And the image quality, I had to pixel peep the heck out of it. And shot to shot to shot, it was hard to see a difference. Sometimes I would see it, sometimes I didn't see any difference, right? But the thing I noticed the most was the autofocusing speed. And the faster, ultimately the faster aperture, right? Because I can shoot at f4 if I want at 300 millimeters, or f5.6 at 420. And I forget what the range is on the 100 400, but it's a little slower than that. It's a little slower than f5.6. It's probably 6.7 or 8, something like that. So yeah, the 100 to 400 I think is an f5.6 on the long end. It is it's a 6.3, so it's f5, so it's slower on the short end and the long end. So yeah, that was the other thing, I guess. Basically, let's call it one stop of light difference. So one stop of light and the autofocusing speed versus having the versatility of a zoom. I decided to go with the autofocus speed and extra stop of light. And cost, of course, right? Because the 300 is double the price. And I have no regrets at this point, and I'm very content with my 300. Although sometimes I think about the 100 to 400, but I've gotten really good at just picking the camera up and nailing exactly what I want to put into the frame. So if I see a bird on a stick, bird in flight, I'm pretty good at just picking the camera up. I should put a lens on this. Picking the camera up and getting the bird in the frame pretty quickly, no matter what the bird is doing. If they're bird in flight, tree swallows that are very fast, I'm pretty good at getting them in the frame very quickly. The bird flies out in front of me, I'm there. Because the 300 millimeter f4 forces you to do that, right? Because you can't zoom out. But congrats on your new lens. I think you'll really enjoy it, because you probably don't do that kind of photography so much, right? The really fast action type stuff anyway. And Robert's here. Good to see you. And yep, that is the worst. Why are you filming me? Yeah, I know, going back to street photography. And AV still good, thank you. Audio and video working fine, thank you, Robin. So I read OM is coming out with a new pen camera. Yeah, that's been going around for a long time. Ever since OM Systems started a couple years ago, they said we're not abandoning the pen line. That means the ones without the EVF. I think they have abandoned the Pen F2. Sadly, they've abandoned that. That's my opinion, unless you've heard otherwise. But the pen line I am optimistic that they will come out with a new pen. And you know, you put that 14 to 42 kit lens on it, it'll probably be even more compact than the L10, in all honesty, right? With all the advantages of an interchangeable lens system. And thank you, Jeff, for the support there. I appreciate that. If you do want to support the channel, you can become a member, or you can just make a donation directly, or use any of my affiliate links down below. It all helps me out a great deal, and I really appreciate it. And Glenn Davis says, "Hi Rob, do you use Nik Collection for wildlife? I wonder if it will help with black and white editing on Photolab 9." So I use Nik Collection primarily for my HDR stuff. And some of the filters that they have in the classic, you know, the Nik color, what is it called? Nik, gosh, my memory. But I use Nik HDR a lot, and I use the other one a lot. What that has all of the vintage camera settings and film stocks. Those two I use the most. And I also like the double exposure effect that's in the Nik Collection. I do not actually use the silver effects very much because I find the black and white that I get straight out of camera just needs a little bit of tweaks. And, you know, in Photolab 9, that I don't need anything that Nik Collection silver effects has to offer. Now, if you're heavy into black and white photography, if that's like your main genre, then I think Silver Efex is, you know, the very best black and white photo editor out there. It has so many controls and tools, especially over the tonality and color response of all the individual colors. And it has a ton of presets and some film stocks and grain, you know, and the new Nik Collection now has AI masking, which is great. But yeah, it's the Silver Efex I don't personally use very much because I'm pretty content with the black and white straight out of camera. Just adds a little bit of contrast, you know, and I'm good. And I'll show you a couple examples. And plus I have my black and white Pentax camera, which I really enjoy. And this side towards screen says, I heard that there's a 15-minute limit on the video at 5K. I know why the video is there due to Sensor Choice. If it does not have no video, then it would not sell. So yeah, there are certainly some limitations. It is like 5 to 20 minutes depending on settings, because it'll just overheat. And if you remember, the S9 had this same limitation in the beginning, and they've since improved on that. I don't know to what extent, but now, from what I understand, the record limitation on the S9 is not as big a deal as it was when it came out. Will they do that with the L10? Who knows? But since it is a photography-centric camera, I don't think that would be a deal breaker for most people. People are not looking to buy this camera as a video camera and need to do long form video. But I think it'll do 4K 60 up to 15 minutes. If I recall, it's when you get into like the 4K 120 where it gets knocked down to 5 or 10 minutes. It's really short for that. But how often do you do long form video at 120 frames per second, right? Typically, you're doing long form video at 24 frames per second, in which case I think it is a 20-minute limit. And Adam says, I look forward to people will do with the L10 for a fixed lens camera. So 1.7 is very respectable. Yes. So let me show you an image. Oh, my internet is hurting here. I'm on my 5G. I don't understand. Not 5G as in cell phone 5G. Why was my microphone off? That's weird. How long is my... I hope the mic just turned off just for a moment there. Okay, so to address this question, says for fixed lens camera, 1.7 to 2.8 is very respectable. So if you look at this image here, on the left, I took the 14 to 42 kit lens at 37 millimeters. We're at f5.5. On the Panasonic, we're at f2.8. So you can see the difference in noise because I'm at f2.8 versus f5.5. So I wonder, let me share this. I'm going to share this link in the chat section so you guys can look at it directly. But this is the main advantage of, you know, because you can take a Pen F with the 14 to 42 kit lens, and it's not that much bigger than the LX100 Mark II. Certainly probably not as big as the L10, potentially. And you can see the huge advantage that you get having a faster lens, because I'm at ISO 20,000 over here, and I'm at ISO 6400 over here. And when you apply noise reduction, so I applied DxO noise reduction, that sort of levels the playing field, right, between ISO 6400 and ISO 20,000. But if you pixel peep it, you can really see some very, very subtle differences in detail. Like if you look at my hands and the hair and my forehead, and then you compare it against, you know, kind of the same fine details over here, there's more detail at ISO 6400 than ISO 20,000, no surprise. But the initial image, you know, this is what you have to deal with when you have a slower lens, and this is what you benefit from by having a faster lens. Because on the wide end, you know, we're at 1.7, but we're roughly about 2 stops faster across the board than a kit lens, which would offer a similar size to the L10. Okay. And good morning, Darko. Good to see you. And Adam says, how good, easy is Panasonic's phone connection app for downloads and media? I struggled with it personally. I don't know why with the LX100. And when I read a review, I went to Camera Labs, you know, Gordon Lang's awesome website. He is the best in the business, if you ask me, when it comes to reviewing cameras. I think you know, if you like the technical things of cameras and you like all the fine print in a review, Camera Labs, Gordon Lang does the very best job. All that said, in his review, he said that he had a very seamless connection and operation with the LX100 Mark II. I've never tried the app when I had the S5 and I had the S1R. I never used the app. I rarely use the app even with my own system cameras, other than to upload and download custom settings, right? And occasionally I have to use the remote shutter because the OM3 doesn't have any kind of shutter release in it. And that's a little bit annoying to me. I don't want to buy the RM something that they want like $100 for that thing. I'm not paying $100 for a remote trigger. But anyhow, my experience has not been that fluid as Gordon Lang. So I don't know if anyone here in the chat section can offer Adam a better answer, or can tell Adam your experience with using the Panasonic Lumix app. but mine was not that fluid, so I just never used it. In fact, I think I still have it installed. Let's see what happens if I try to watch it work like perfectly now. What's it called? It's called the Lumix. Where is it? There's the Leica one. The Leica one worked all right. Image app. Okay. So it says data about the current location is collected to make it possible. Whatever. All right. So I'm going to load up this app, and I have the camera turned on. I don't know if it automatically connects or if I have to. It says searching or waiting for camera to transmit pictures. Close this dialog app. Select the camera's SSID for direct connection from the Wi-Fi list. So I do have to put this into some sort of Wi-Fi mode, which would be, okay, it's not, there it is, Wi-Fi function. Okay, so now I'm gonna set this up. New connection, remote shooting. So you were asking about phone connection. So yeah, I'm gonna see what it's like to download images off this. Select Wi-Fi of settings from smartphone. Please connect. All right, so let's do Wi-Fi. LX100. So it's in my list here. Now it's connecting. Oh, it looks like it connected. So let me go back. All right, now let's see what happens. All right, so now we're connected, right? So there's a transfer image here. Let's try that. So I'm going to do transfer image. Transfer selection. So now the images are coming up. Let me grab this one of Ellie. Send the phone. Depending on the OS of the smartphone, raw files may not be displayed correctly. Okay. So it's transferring over the RAW and the JPEG. The JPEG already went first, and it was very fast. So let me show you one more. So I'm going to select this one. So I've selected this one, and then you touch this button here. JPEG, RAW. You know what? It's actually pretty smooth. Let me try. I'm going to try this one, remote control. So it says change to recording mode. Yes, the lens may not extend, whatever. Or the lens may extend. So, oh, wow. So that was fast. Let's take a picture. Oops. Let me point over here. All right. It's working perfectly. It's very good. What can I say? My initial impression was wrong. Seems to be fine now. And just to give you an idea, it has everything on here, right? I can control exposure comp, aperture, shutter speed, focus point, and then if I go into video mode, I bet whatever video modes are available. Display. Picture of my chair. Okay. Zoom in and out. Everything works great. Okay, so there you have it in real time. It works great. Okay, some crazy rumor I heard Nikon might be making arrangements. Yeah, I heard that too. We'll see. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. It's been a while because I remember a long time ago Nikon was talking about doing that. Then they canceled the whole project. I forget what that they were called. Somebody here might remember. But Nikon was going to come out with some 20 megapixel APS-C compact cameras that had fixed lenses on them. And then I heard later it was canceled. I was so excited at the time because I was a big Nikon guy back then. And I was so excited. I'm like, I was so disappointed when they said they're going to cancel that line. And Robert says, 40 people on my holiday bus tour, and every person used their phone and everyone was over 50. Wow. That makes sense though. And Roger's talking to Robin there. And let's see, Heather says, unless you have money to burn or a professional like Rob, you're too kind. I'm not a professional. You know, I try to be anyway. Phones for a pocket camera. It's amazing what you can do with a phone these days. It is. And Robin says the Ricoh GR series has built-in ND. It activates automatically. Oh, thank you, Robin. That makes sense because on very bright days, if you want to shoot wide open, having a built-in ND filter would allow you to do that. And JP McCrumman says, agree about the ZV-1. I bought it new for $640. Nice travel camera with killer AF and 7 custom function settings. No EVF or flash. Oh, you know, no built-in flash, but you can. It does have a hot shoe. It does have a hot shoe, and I believe I did try some flash photography with it. It's been a while since I've tried it. But I told a friend of mine to buy the ZV-1, you know, because they had it over there for $500 over at District Camera. I said, just get this if you want a pocketable camera, because she was going on a cruise and she wanted to just take a little pocket camera. And I said, well, go get a ZV-1. You know, if you want a pocket camera that's decent. And the L10 has okay specs, but I will pass. I just took the OM5 Mark II and the 1718 on vacation. Perfect, simple, small, weather sealed, all I need. Exactly. You had the 14 to 42 easy lens, but never used it. Yep. Yeah, I mean, the OM5, I could have got an OM5 for about the same money, right? Because OM5's on sale for $1049. So right off the bat, it's $450 cheaper. And then I could have thrown on, you know, another lens. If I was buying it without a lens, you know, I wouldn't have to buy the lens for it, but I'm just, for comparison purposes, if you bought the OM5 with a decent lens, you'd be in the same ballpark as the L10. The only thing the OM5 lacks really is the subject detection, right? Not a big deal. But it's certainly as capable or more capable as a photographer's camera. And it's also the L10 would have better video specs. But anyway, The OM5 with a 17 is probably the same size and weight, more or less, as the L10, maybe even a tiny bit smaller. If they had an OM5 in sand beige, I would have seriously considered that instead of the L10. Yeah, without a doubt. I'm terrible. I'm still on the fence now. But it's okay. When it comes in, I'll probably be able to sell it for like more than what I paid for it. You know? I guess in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, yeah, like my Deluxe 8, I could sell that for more than what I paid for, because I bought it when it originally came out at the original list price of like 1,500. And now it's selling for like 19. So I could certainly get my 1,500 back. And Mox says, I'm surprised you bought the L10 over a second OM3, given how much you love the OM3. Prices are starting to come down a bit for used OM3s. Yes. I eventually probably will get a second OM3, but maybe a little later. I think prices will come down a little more. It's not fair. It doesn't seem right given how capable the OM3 is. But if you think about most, not that the OM3 is a flagship camera, but it's pretty much right there, right? It's virtually a flagship camera. If you look at all the flagship cameras, they get destroyed in price. You know, when it comes, it's usually all these other cameras that don't drop in price. You know, like the X100s. You know, a lot of the Fujis, they don't drop in price. But if you look at like a Canon R3, Canon R5, you know, when we went from the R5 to the R5 Mark II, the R5 just got crushed. When you look at the Nikon Z7 II, now that the Z8 is out, it kind of crushed the Z7 II prices. And on the used market, you can buy Z7 II for a fraction of what it costs new. So yeah, the flagship cameras, the higher end cameras tend to fall in price quite a bit, like the S1R. You know, that was a 3,000 some dollar camera. You can buy them for like 1,100, 1,200 bucks now. And I get it, it's 5 years old, but you look at other 5-year-old cameras like a Pen F. Pen F is more than 5 years old, and it's selling for about the same price as an S1R. And it didn't retail for anywhere near what the S1R did. And Roger says the 75 to 300 millimeter lenses were updated with a little bit better image quality. They might sell a lot of them. Size and weight are so great. Robin, I'll have to check your past review on it. Yeah, I wonder if they could really make it a little better, how much that would translate into making it larger, right? Because there is an inverse relationship between the size of a lens and the image quality that you get. The higher the image quality, the bigger and heavier and chunkier the lens. You know, generally speaking, lens technology has advanced in the sense of coatings and sharpness and things like that. But to make a high quality lens is all about taking the light rays to land on a single pixel, right? So you got light rays coming in from all directions at all different frequencies to come in onto a single pixel. And that part has not changed since they started making the very first lenses. And that's what separates high quality lenses from, you know, more budget options, is how well it can manage controlling the light coming onto a sensor. And I just haven't seen any changes there. You look at any Sigma lens, any high-end Sony lens that's super tack sharp, they're all huge. They're all huge if you want it like a perfect lens. And the more perfect you try to make it, that the size and weight goes up, feels like exponentially, right? That said, I'm perfectly happy with the $200 lens. You know, I I don't need, uh, at least on the wider angles, say under 100 millimeters, under 150 millimeters, I don't really need the sharpest, most perfect lens, because I can usually fill the frame with what I want, or I'm trying to get a super wide angle, etc. Where I did pay a lot of money was my 300 millimeter f4, because I have to crop in quite a bit and often with that lens because of the wildlife that I take. But that said, let's look at a couple images with the 75 to 300. Hopefully my internet connection gets better here. Oh, it's a little bit better. Not a lot. Let's go to this album. Oh, this is brutal. I really need to it's not coming up. When it does, I'll bring it back up. And FYI, for Android phone users, Snapseed has been updated to version 4, similar to the iOS version. A very nice update after. Oh, okay. I've never used Snapseed, but the Project Indigo, I couldn't find it for Android. I thought it was available, but I couldn't find it. And Marcia says, which lens do you recommend for super wide? The 8mm? Yeah, definitely. The 8mm is awesome. I can show you a few images from that as well. So this finally came up. So here's the... Seriously, is this going to... This is just way too slow. I can't get anything to pull up. Let me try this. If I sort by name, I can go to my EM5. All right, so this is the 75 to 300, and these are all processed with DxO. And the EM5 Mark III or Mark II, one of the two. This is heavily cropped. This is down to less than 2 megapixels for this whole frame. The bird itself probably has well less than a megapixel. This one, not too sharp. Not that sharp. Yeah, not great here. That looks pretty good. That's not too bad. These were a little bit over processed, but that's not the 75 to 300. Here's the 75. Okay, here's a more normal shot with the 75 to 300. And there's kind of a normal shot. This is also heavily cropped, 2.85 megapixels. Yep, looking good. This is a 1 megapixel image, heavily cropped. This is 0.86 megapixels. This is also heavily cropped. With the EM5, this has got to be the Mark III with the 75 to 300. This one I misfocus. This one came out pretty good. 75 to 300 with the EM5 Mark III. And these are all on my Flickr page, so you can check them out there. So yeah, it's definitely not as sharp as the 300mm f4, but I think for the size, weight, and price point, this is pretty good. What we need is really, and you have to keep in mind, these are relatively high ISO. Like this is ISO 2000 with the 75 to 300. This one is a lower ISO, ISO 800. But this came out really good. Of course, I was able to fill the frame. This is about 5 megapixels worth of data. Thought that came out pretty good, you know, for bird on a stick type stuff. This is also the 75 to 300. And EM5 Mark III, not bad. This is ISO 250. This is at ISO 1000. This is the EM5 Mark II with the 75 to 300. EM5 Mark II with the 75 to 300. This came out pretty good. I was able to fill the frame with this. This is a full 16 megapixels of data. Not bad. Again, processed with DxO. So DxO is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of, you know, getting the sharpness and everything out of this lens, plus all of the processing that I do. So if I did not process those images, yeah, there would definitely be a noticeable difference between, say, the 300 f4 Pro and the 75 to 300. My internet is just so bad. It's so bad today. Sorry, I was trying to pull up another image. So what we're looking for is something between a 75 to 300 and, say, the 100 to 400, right? Because the 100-400 is a pretty stellar lens optically. Between these two lenses, so we'd be talking about a price point of, let's say, $900. You know, just cut it down the middle, or $1,000. That would actually be pretty attractive if they could make a 75 to 300 at $1,000 price point that was optically as good as, say, the 100 to 400, or better than the 75 to 300, and still maintain a decent aperture. I don't know. That's a tough call. That's a pretty big ask, because they've kind of flushed out, right? They have the 50 to 200 f2.8. They have the 100 to 400, which is an f5 to 6.3. And then the 75 to 300, which is a 6.7, I believe, on the long end. So you want to try and get something in between. I don't know if there's enough market for that. It would probably take away the market share for the 100 to 400, though. And what does this say? As much as, I'm way behind here on the chat. As much as Rob loves his OM3, I love my XT50 for the exact same reason. Small form factor, fun to use and hold, good AF relatively, and great lens selection. Yes, the XT50 is an amazing little camera. And there's a slew of compact, like pancake style lenses for the Fujifilm system, from Fujifilm themselves as well as third party. And that did cross my mind, right? Because I could get the XT50. XT50's gone up in price, though. I think it's currently selling for about the same as the L10 now. Let me just take a quick look. Fujifilm XT50. Yeah, so it's selling for $100 more, brand new, and then they got used ones for $1,200. And this is $100 off. This is on sale. But yeah, I could buy a used XT50 for a little less than a new L10 and get basically the same form factor and size and weight and an extremely capable camera. And I'd have to rely on lens image stabilization when available as much as the L10 does. So yeah, I think that's a viable option. It has a decent EVF, right? It has a tilt screen. It has the new APS-C 40 megapixel sensor and the latest that Fuji has to offer currently. The only reason I did not go for that camera is because I have an XH2. And if I want something more more portable, more compact, I have my OM3, I have my Pen F, I have my Deluxe 8. You know, I have a lot of cameras that can fill the need that the XT50 would. If I had to buy Fujifilm over again, I would probably get an XT50. I'm just not, I don't think it was available when I bought my XH2. But if I had to do it over again, I would very likely get an XT50. Even though it'd be a little awkward with the lenses I bought for it. I bought the 33 1.4 and I bought the 55 to 200. So it's a little small to handle these larger lenses. But the way I use the Fuji now, it doesn't matter. I'd be fine with just a little pancake kit lens that they come with. The 15 to 45 it is. And an XT50 would be a really nice match. That'd be a really nice little setup. Glued to my lens equals default lens. Okay. If that is the common definition, I would say that, yeah, the 12 to 45 is typically glued to my OM3. I'm glad you're ordering one. Sorry for the late join. Had to run to Silver Spring and back to Springfield. Man, well, it's Sunday traffic, right? Luckily, no traffic on the American Legion. Great Falls water's incredibly low. Yeah, I went there last week. I don't know if I shared any images from that, but I went there last week. And Mr. Anonymous, good to see you. And good morning, the great Vanzini. And drop my sand. We age again yesterday. I have no idea what you're talking about. Fractured to up filter, but lens and camera seems fine. Okay, so you drop your camera, but the lens and filter seem good. Okay. Let's see. You might have to reword that a bit if you haven't already. And Christian says, hi Rob, greetings from the UK. I just took my first astrophoto based on your tutorial. Came out great, thanks. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad that worked out well. And thanks, Rob. You just saved me some money. You're welcome. I guess it was about something I was showing earlier. I don't know what. Are there tips for using R filters, which I dabbled with them, but I feel like I'm missing the point of them. They're just for fun. I mean, they're art filters, right? I like to use them time to time, you know, just for fun. I don't take the art filters very seriously though. My internet stinks today too. Yeah, it's weird. No audio during, yeah, sorry about that. I must have hit the mic button somewhere. Ah, it's back, good. And let's see, how often do you reboot your system, including the router? The computer I reboot 3 or 4 times a week. Most of the time it just goes to sleep. But a full restart, right? On Windows computers, you have to restart because just powering down and powering back up is not like a full reboot, so to speak. So I restart 3 or 4 times a week. The router, I restarted about a week ago. Because I started noticing problems about a month ago with my internet connection. And I can only attribute that to the router because it's affecting all the computers, whether I'm on my laptop in my bedroom, my TV, which has an internet connection, and my laptop here in the office. All three devices are suffering from slow internet. So if it was like for one day, I would attribute it to maybe my internet service provider. 1 or 2 days, I would blame the internet service provider. But this has been going on for weeks now. So it's something to do with some infrastructure problem here in my house. And I haven't changed anything. I haven't remodeled my house or moved to different rooms. Everything is where it should be, or where it has been forever. So then it becomes, trying to diagnose where is the problem. And the only two pieces of equipment outside of these other three devices are the router and the Cyva router, and then I have the router provided by the ISP, and then I have a router connected to that for longer range because the ISP router is tiny, So I plug that into my personal router because that has like 3 channels and 6 antennas. But that router is more than 10 years old. I don't know when I bought it, but I bought it before I moved into this house, and I've been here more than 10 years. And I can't recall. I probably bought it back. Anyway, it's more than 10 years old. So I suspect that, because I also got an email from the company. Who makes that? Netgear? No, it's not Netgear. Anyway, I got an email from the company that makes that router saying we're not supporting it anymore. No more firmware updates, etc. I got that email probably 4 or 5 months ago. So it's definitely old. It's beyond its support cycle, which whatever that is. And audio is gone. I'm so sorry about that. Robin, should we get a fund going for Rob to get a boom mic? I just don't have room for a boom mic here. Seriously. It would be a major issue. And Bob says debating between OM3 versus EM1 Mark II versus EM1 Mark III for travel street photography. I hope to bring to Antarctica trip. I would definitely get the OM3 over the EM1 Mark II and Mark III. The only thing that the OM3 lacks over the other two cameras is it doesn't have dual card slots. But what you gain is much better autofocus, in my opinion. I think Robin would argue with me on that, particularly for face detect. But I think you get a much better autofocusing system with subject detect. You get additional features that you can grow into, like the Grad ND, the Live ND. Well, actually, yeah, those are features I don't think are on the EM1s. And let me think. And a slightly smaller form factor. In my case, I ended up buying a grip for it, so it's really about the same size and weight as my OM1. But you do get a smaller form factor, and I don't know. I like it. I don't know what the EM1s have over the OM3 other than the form factor. I think you gain a lot more with the OM3. And the OM3 has a newer sensor. It has a stacked 20 megapixel sensor versus a non-stacked sensor. And that really only comes into play when we're talking about sports action photography. You get less rolling shutter effects and things like that. That's a minor thing, having a stacked sensor versus unstacked, in my opinion, but that's another benefit. You get the newer sensor, newer processor, faster processing. You know, the only downside is you can get an EM1 Mark II for about $600. I mean, relatively speaking, here in the US, $600-700. You can get an EM1 Mark III for about $700 or $800, and you can get an OM1 Mark I for about $1,000, $1,100. The OM3, you're going to be 13 to 16. If you buy brand new, 1,700. But I assume you're looking on the used market. So let's say you pay 13 or 14 for it. I would, for me personally, I would get the OM3 hands down. Wouldn't have to think twice about it, because you're not really giving up much, and you're not giving up much, but you're gaining a lot. Looking for a light compact camera and don't like changing lenses. What zoom lenses? The 12 to 45 Pro f4. That's what I recommend. Some people prefer the 12 to 40 f2.8 for that extra stop of light. But you can get the OM3 with the 12 to 45 f4 Pro for $19.99 right now on sale. You can get both. And I prefer the smaller compact size of the 12 to 45 over the 12 to 40 f4. That one stop of light difference is not too critical in that focal range, in my opinion. So I have my 12 to 40. 12 to 40. It doesn't work anymore because, anyway, there's some history about why this doesn't work. So if I take, yeah, this, so these both have a little bit of a, oh, this one doesn't. But yeah, this is the 2.8 and this is the f4. And this has a 58 millimeter filter thread. This has a 62 millimeter. So right off the bat, you know, this is about 4 millimeters wider in diameter, if not more. And it's roughly 3 or 4 millimeters longer. So it's a bit heftier. It's not a huge difference. But if you want the extra stop of light, this is the 12 to 45. I'm sorry, this is the 12 to 40 f2.8. And it's fine, right? But when this broke, I just replaced it with this because I found I didn't really need f2.8 and I just would rather have a little bit smaller form factor, right? So that's the lens I would recommend, the 12 to 45 f4. If you really want that extra stop of light, f2.8, either one. And if you really want compact, you can just get the 14 to 42 easy lens. The only reason I don't use this more often is because the filter thread size is small. And as I mentioned earlier, I do like using, I got a little pack here. I do like using all my fancy filters, you know, like I have this Vortex lens. I just like playing around. I got that. I got a star filter lens. I got my kaleidoscope lens. You know, that's just me. If you don't care about filters at all, because I was able to find a nice polarizer for it, and it doesn't protrude out much, right? You can just get this. It's a little bit slower on the long end. It's an f5.6, but on the wide end, it's a tiny bit faster. It's f3.5 to 5.6 total. So this is what it looks like to kind of just carry around. So you could buy the OM3 without a lens for $16.99, and then you're going to pay about $300 for this thing, give or take. You can buy them used for under $200, I believe. This is a very, very compact setup, and I do go out like this quite a bit, and then you turn it on and it extends out. But now we're we're a little bit closer to, well, not really, right? But we're a little bit closer to what this is. But still, this is a very, very compact system. But if you look at, here's the 12 to 45 f4. They're roughly the same. So that's why I like to take this lens out a lot. When I'm going out with my friends and stuff, I just use this, you know. Because people photos, you know, just going out social type photos, this is perfectly fine. So those are the three options. I'll let you decide which one works best for you. I think the 12 to 45 though would be my, if I had to pick one, it would be this one. And it's primarily because of this, and also this has a manual zoom, right? So you can zoom in and out very quickly, whereas that one is a power zoom, so it's a little slow going in and out. The stream is very laggy, yes. I don't know why my internet connection is so bad today. I'm sorry. Oops. I put one of the older TG cameras with flip screen in my daughter's. Oh yeah, I remember those. College student used the daylights out of it, giving my youngest one for vacation. Yep. Those are pretty cool. The little TG series. I forget what it was called, but I remember that one. And the L10, I'm trying to think how much I would pay for one. Certainly not 1,500. Yeah. I think it's worth 1,500 though. But not to everyone, right? Some people it's not worth $1. It's like you could give it to them, they'd never use it. And Rob, which L10 color way did you choose? I got the silver. I got the silver. I just like silver cameras. I prefer black, like for, I mean, I really do prefer black, like on my EM5s. I like the black better than the silver. I like both, black and silver, but I just went with silver. I was torn between the two, but ultimately I went with silver. Oh wow, now I'm excited. I will get to use the L10 vicariously through Rob. I'm telling you, Rob, those Rob Trek t-shirts will be a big hit. Oh, thanks. In your reference to an OM5 versus buying an L10, you probably would use OM5 less than an L10. You already have the OM1 and OM3 at least. L10 is a standalone choice when going out and shooting. Yes. The L10, it's just kind of different and unique. It's a very unique camera, I think, that may never be replaced. Like there may never be an L10 Mark II, kind of like the Pen F. I just don't think there'll ever be a Pen F Mark II. So it has that kind of going for it from my personal point of view. I like unique cameras. But that played a very, very minor role in my purchasing decision. Rob sent you a YouTube rumor on the TG8. I did watch about 30 seconds of that, and right away I could tell it was basically AI slop. I don't think there's anything in that video that I would find credible. I'll try and watch it all the way through. But yeah, right away I recognized it as AI slop. They just slapped something together. So I wouldn't take anything that they say in that video with any, I would take it with a huge grain of salt. And Rob, on the 75 to 300, why not better glass only? Well, because the lenses themselves are all very good already. You know, to make a lens better, you have to add more lenses to correct for the wavelengths of light hitting a single point on the sensor, right? Hitting a pixel on the sensor. That is what really makes the lens better, is the lens design and the number of elements that they use to create the image. Of course, you can always add some better coatings, uh, but the 75-300 doesn't has pretty decent coatings as it is. But I don't think just they can actually just put better glass inside a 75-300. Um, I don't because of the optical design of the lens, being a zoom, I don't see it really improving the image quality enough to justify a price increase. They'd really have to add more elements or use larger elements to make it a better lens. And Flickr has been quite slow for me lately as well. And I have over a gig up and down. Okay, so it's a combination, right? Because I am noticing, because I am getting little pop-up messages from YouTube saying my stream is slow. Rob, what is the link for your Flickr page? Just look for Rob Trek, but I'll put it here. It's flickr.com/RobTrek. But there it is. And in here, if you go to albums, I have a lot of different albums. Sometime late last year, I started categorizing things. So you can see things like by lens and by camera, by filter. I group things together. So one of my more practical albums, though, is if you search for comparisons, I have some comparison albums, so do view all 6. So this is just the general comparisons folder. Here's the A7R5, some DxO on and on, right? There's the Pentax monochrome comparisons. So I'm going to try and build on this a little bit. But if we want to do, my internet seems to be pretty good now, 75-300. If I do search for that, as soon as I say that, it slows down. I have an album just of photos that I took with this lens. One of my favorite photos I've taken with this lens is of a blue jay. I did like this one. Little tree swallow scooping up some water. But these are all my 75-300 photos. Some are better than others, obviously. Blame the photographer, not the lens. But one of my favorite photos is it's very early on. Are you guys like that? Like, do you guys like your photos that you took when you first started in photography versus some of the ones you take now? I found that I actually like a lot of my older photos better than the ones I take now. Just general ones. I'm much better birder than I was, 10 years ago or whatever, but we're getting close. It was a blue jay photo. This one. I love this photo for whatever reason. This was OM1 with the 75-300. And the lighting was perfect on this blue jay. I just love the colors. I love the detail and sharpness I got out of it. It's still one of my favorites. And then the rest of these are pretty representative of what you can expect from this lens. So, you know, if you want to improve the images you get from the 75 to 300, I highly, highly recommend DxO Photolab. Okay, and Robin says, when I share images, I load images from local drive, else weird things can happen. Yes. I try to do that too, but I've been looking for some older images, which I don't have readily available. I don't have a good, personally, I don't have a very good cataloging system. That, and I have a bad memory, which would imply I should have a better cataloging system. I was surprised by how fast my OM5s were yesterday in the parade. Yeah, the OM5s are awesome. They're essentially the EM1 Mark III in a compact package, right? And some really good shots there. Oh, thank you. And Marcia says, Rob, can I use the 8mm for night sky? I want to not take my 7 to 14 when I travel. It's too heavy. Yes, absolutely. That 8mm f1.8 Pro is an awesome lens. A friend of mine, Shri, you may know him. He's not a fan of that lens. He has it, but he keeps trying other wide angle lenses. And I try to tell him it's the best lens you have at that focal length or near that focal length. I don't know why he doesn't like it. He doesn't like defishing it because it does have some barrel distortion, but I think that's the only reason he doesn't like it. He wants a rectilinear wide angle. Because he doesn't have a fluid workflow for defishing it, I guess. And Larry's here. Good morning. And Roger says, Marshall, that's for you, Marcia. And Robin says, hi, Roger. Okay. Did my chat just jump all the way back up to the top? I feel like I've seen these before. And my OM5s, oh, your sand color got dropped, fractured the UV filter. Oh, okay, now I understand. I was totally lost when I was trying to read your chat from before. And your live stream is perfect soundtrack for me during this editing session. Okay. This is from okay. Thank you, Robin. I do appreciate your support and being here. You've always been very good to me and my channel and my viewers here. So it is greatly appreciated. And before I forget, tomorrow evening, 5 p.m. my time, Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to have 3 or 4 OM System ambassadors. I haven't nailed down because one person is a little bit random. Exactly who's going to be there, but it's going to be Tom and Lisa Kuchora. Can never remember their last name properly. Frank Smith. I've had them on my channel before, and I think the wild card is going to be Chris McGinnis, who specializes in macro photography. But we're going to be talking about wildlife and macro photography tomorrow, and giving some more tips and tricks, and talking about gear. So join us tomorrow night for an awesome evening with some OM System ambassadors, which I'm very proud and very fortunate to have on my channel tomorrow to be with all of us. And Hiker just said, regarding the L10, since I don't shoot street, I will save my money and see what an eventual OM1 Mark III has to offer. I agree 100%. 10-year-old router needs to be replaced. Yes, it's, like I said, at least 10. I'm curious. It's the Nighthawk X6 R8000. I believe that's what I have. Release date. My internet is crappy again. It came out in 2014. So yeah, this is my router. The Nighthawk X6 R8000, tri-band Wi-Fi, high performance, blah blah blah. 2014. So that makes it what, 12 years old? Because I bought it like right when it came out. And Thomas says, "Hi Rob, I recently came across your back button focusing video. You said it was useful for product photography because the focus point is locked, but in the first mode the focus won't change either. What am I missing?" Okay. When I said the focus point is locked, I meant that, you know, you can push the shutter button without worrying about the camera refocusing, right? So you push the back button focus, it'll lock the focus, and then you can just repeatedly hit the shutter button, or do whatever other functions you want to do. But I think that was my point when I was talking about that video. But in the first mode, the focus won't change either. Well, yeah. So if you do not assign back button focus and you leave half press shutter button as your default mode, right? The first mode, I think that's what you mean, is every time you push the shutter button, the camera's going to refocus, right? Even when you use the same focus point, let's say I do SAF, right? Single point focus. There's potential for the second time you push the, the first time you take a picture, it's going to lock focus on a certain point. If you don't change that point, theoretically, when you push the shutter button again, it's going to focus on the same exact point and nothing's going to change. In practice, if you were to take 100 shots, there's potential for that focus point to shift just slightly. But if you do back button focus and decouple the autofocus with the shutter button, you don't have to worry about the camera changing focus inadvertently. So even if it's just a minor amount, it can change shot to shot to shot when you're using the shutter button. So decoupling it and assigning a back button focus, that eliminates that margin. That I think that's what I meant. So hopefully that answered your question. And Jeff says, OM System UK are offering EM10 Mark IV with a 12 to 45 f4 Pro for 620. Wow. Man, that's a killer deal. That's a killer deal. So that's what, maybe 700 US dollars? I mean, the 12 to 45 Pro retails for that much all by itself. They're just throwing in the camera for free. That's a deal. And Darko says, the 18 to 105 f-mount, I found it very capable of street snapping for the D80 Z50, even on the Z7. Yeah, I have that lens. Haven't used it in years, 10 years probably, but yeah, it's a nice range. I found the autofocus to be a little bit slow, but mine's getting really long in the tooth. It's really old. Not lagging on my end, okay. And if you had already an EM1 Mark II, would you get an OM3? Yes. Also, I want to start portrait and want a flash to start with. Should I get the IT32 or an older, larger speed light for a first flash? So it just depends on your budget. I would recommend the Godox V480, okay, the V480 as your first flash. The IT32 is nice, but if you're going to do portrait photography, you generally going to need more power and more versatility. By that I mean the V480 is going to offer a lot more power, so you're going to be able to use it inside of light modifiers if you want to. Versus the IT32, it's great for direct on-camera flash, more than enough power for that. Even to some extent outdoors, but not so much. The V480 would be even more powerful. But a lot of times in portrait photography, you're going to expand into off-camera lighting, which would include using light modifiers. And when you do that, the IT32 is going to be come up a little short in that respect. You really need, even just a simple umbrella, right? Because when you use a basic shoot-through umbrella, half the light is bounced back. So the flash power is cut in half right off the bat. And you really need the flexibility of a more powerful flash. So the V480 is a nice compromise between flash power and flash size, because the next size up is like a Godox V1 or a Godox TT850. These are much larger, heavier flashes, and a bit unwieldy to use in a lot of situations. For strictly portrait photography, then the V1 or the TT850 would make more sense. If you're on a very tight budget, because the V480 is $169, if you're on a very tight budget, the TT600 is it's a full-size flash. The TT600 is a full-size flash. It uses AA batteries, so you're going to have to use some really good either rechargeables like some envelopes or just a whole pack of alkaline batteries. The recycle time is a little slower, which may or may not be critical for your portrait photography. Depends if you're firing off multiple shots. That could be an issue. Like if the model is moving around and you want to fire off shots rapidly, the TT600 is not going to cut it. But for normal portrait photography where they sit down, they pose, you take a shot, they move, you take another shot, TT600 is like $50 or $60, somewhere in that price range. So you'll save about $100 buying a TT600 and get a more powerful flash with functionally all the same, virtually all the same that the V480 can do for portrait photography. So forget about the IT32. You're going to be very limited when it comes to off-camera flash. The V480 has more than enough power for both on-camera outdoors and off-camera indoors, including modifiers. I had the Fuji X20, which was fun. Yeah, the X20, nice little camera. That was a little compact point and shoot. I really wanted the I think it's the X70. I had a chance to buy one years and years ago for like $400. And I was like, well, I'm going to wait a little bit. The price has got to come down. This is an old camera. They're asking like $1,000 for that camera now. It's insane. Rob, will you be doing IRL street photography vlog with your L10? I can try. I can try. And CallMed says, thanks for everything. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for being here in the live stream. And Heather says, my local not-for-profit club asked me to take pics for anniversary party dinner for $. I sucked. The light was terrible. My ISO was way up. Not taking any money as I maybe have 10 to 12 good shots. So, yeah, you need to use flash. That way you can keep your ISOs reasonable. Like if it's low light indoors, you can be like at ISO 1600. If you're indoors in decent lighting, you're going to be at base ISO 200 to 800 in that range. But typically indoor lighting, I'm usually at between ISO 800 and 1600 with flash. If you're not using any flash, yeah, you're going to be up there. You're going to be ISO 32, 64, 12,000. Yeah, it's tough. So I know where you're coming from. Robin says, when I was working for Olympus, the engineer told us that they were super ambitious in making lenses sharper, brighter, but then marketing came back and dialed things down due to cost. Yes. Uh, and I don't think that metric has changed in present day, right? Certainly on the very low end, the cheap end, everybody wants to get into that market, and they do a good job. Viltrox is making some excellent budget lenses. I can't recommend them enough. But if you really want optical perfection, there's no substitute for, the manufacturing process plays a big role of that in the polishing and the assembly and the tolerances, uh, the choice of materials for durability and weather sealing and all of that, and the size, right? You have to use bigger glass to get more light. Um, and do bigger glass to do optical corrections that you can't do with smaller pieces of glass. So all of these things drive the price up, on the manufacturing side and the materials side, just for a little bit better, right? A little bit better, a little bit better, and it's exponentially, the price goes up as you increase the quality. I said I like the snapshots I took at the beginning of the photography journey more than the ones I get now, for sure. I know, right? Um, and I don't know if it's because the images are technically any better, because they're not. They're just regular images. But I think what I what I was saying very early in the stream is the feeling that you got when you took that picture, and you look at that picture and it kind of reminds you of that feeling of reward and joy and excitement and everything when you're first starting out in photography. And I still get a lot of that today, right? I still really enjoy the photography, but it's different when I go out now, in that there's a lot of shots that I would not take that I would have taken when I was starting out, right? There's so many shots that I would take uh, when I was first starting out that I would not bother with today. Um, all I have to do is pull up my Flickr page. Let me just sort by. Oh, there's no way for me to do this. Let me do this by camera roll. My Flickr, you can look at my Flickr and look at. Let me go back to 2012, which is about when I started photography. Oh, let's see. These are all family photos. So yeah, 2013, 2013. These were with my Sony NEX. Like if you look at this shot here, I would not bother taking a shot like this these days. But I remember when I took this shot, I was like, oh, this is so cool. You got this really nice complementary colors here of this very kind of purplish with this reddish color. Uh, here's a very early black and white street photo. I would not take this shot today, but I really enjoyed it when I took it, because I really like the textures of the brick, and I love architecture in general. Here's a street shot. I don't think this even exists now. This little trolley thing. I don't think they have that anymore. I mean trolley bus. It's not a trolley. This almost feels vintage. Look how old the cars are. And here's another black and white that I did. Like I would not take pictures like this anymore. This is using one of the art filters in the camera. Maybe. Or maybe I processed it using Nik Collection back when it was something else. Um, Yeah, I don't know. That's more of a snapshot. Here's one of my first tries at long exposure. Of course, this is a piece of cake now with our live ND, right, in our cameras. But I remember I had a hard time with this one. Of course, I like these photos because, this is why I got into photography, was primarily for taking pictures of me and my dog out on my adventures, hence the name Rob Trek. uh, that was a cool shot. Lots of dog pictures, lots of pictures around Annapolis. Um, but yeah, I did everything with my dog Riley back then. And then of course, if you look at today's photos, it's a lot of there's a lot of pictures of me and Ellie. So, but yeah, there's a lot of photos there that I wouldn't bother taking today. I was less encumbered by standard and practices of others, yes. Yeah, so you're just kind of finding your own vibe and your own, mojo, right, with photography. Technical shooting, I'm better now, of course, like paid jobs, yes. And Rob was watching another photographer on YouTube yesterday, and he was talking about bird photos at slow shutter speeds. Pretty amazing shots. I'll email you a link. Maybe worth the talk on. Okay, can look at it. And Rob, did you bird your older EM cams, and which was your favorite Olympus cam from that time? Honestly, I didn't do a lot of birding back then. Yeah, I didn't do a lot. It really wasn't until I got my OM1 4 years ago that I really got into birding. But I would say the EM1 Mark II and Mark III would be a minimum for bird photography. But I just didn't do a lot with the EM1s or my EM10s, my EM5s when I had them. When those were the only cameras I had, I didn't use them a lot for birding. But the reason I say the EM1s is because of the phase detect autofocus. Because I remember when I got the EM1 Mark II, I got the EM1 Mark II and I put that 75 to 300 on there. I was amazed at the difference in the autofocus performance. It was like a totally different lens. It just performed a lot faster. It was more accurate. There wasn't that hesitation with the continuous autofocus like that you get with contrast detect cameras. So when I was shooting with my EM10 Mark II and the 75 to 300, yeah, I could get some shots. But I was almost as proficient manually focusing as I was with the autofocus. And when I got the EM1 Mark II, it was a night and day difference. So that I would say is a minimum if you want to do any kind of birding with the older Olympus cameras, the EM1 Mark II. And Higerdu says, you're right about some favorite pics from being early on, maybe because I did not know enough about technical settings at the time that I bogged down and just concentrated on composition. Yes, exactly. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. About what time? It's 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So New York City time. And Rob, that router should be put to the pasture. Yeah. And TP-Link makes some nice routers. Yep. Yeah, the other thing I noticed is when I turn my computers on, it takes like 2 minutes for it to connect to the router. And I know, and it's, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's this laptop or the one in my bedroom or the TV out front. All three devices take a while to connect. Anyway, it says, we have fiber connection to the house that speeds up so much my connection from my previous setup. Yeah, I have a fiber. Well, I pay for the cheapest one, but supposedly it's a fiber optic line. I don't know. And the M43 XA1 with a 14 or 15 millimeter f2. I thought the XA... Oh, you're making a suggestion here for a compact camera, because the XA1 is an old film camera, right? Uh, so you want a micro four thirds version of the XA1. So yeah, that would preclude having IBIS. Maybe you put an optical viewfinder, just a little, you know, like that. I don't, yeah, I think the XA1, I have an XA2. Let's see. Well, I'll use, my XA2 is in a bag. I put my XA2 inside of a black pouch because it still has film in it, so I just don't want any light leaks or anything on what's left. I have a few frames left. But what I'm talking about is like this little, even a little cheap optical thing. Since you're using a fixed focal length, you might as well, you could just get away with one of these, right? Just a simple optical EVF. I'm sorry, OVF, right? I don't know why I said optical EVF. Optical viewfinder. It doesn't have to be through the lens like an SLR, right? They could do that. But isn't that what the GM5 is? GM5 is, they've already made, Panasonic's already made it, the GM5. It's got an electronic viewfinder. They'd have to turn that into an OLED viewfinder and maybe add a tilt screen, not a fully flip out, but just tilt. And they can make it about this size, but this is still not really pocketable. I mean, it is. These are like normal chinos. I could stick it in there, but it's kind of bulky, right? How about, let's try my LX100. This is how people get dust in the lenses. They stick these things in there. Yeah, this is tight, but it does fit. It's a little snug though. If I take it out, yeah, it's snug. It would be hard to sit down and get up with this in my pocket. Same thing with this. But I think what you're talking about, Anthony, would be about this size, right? This is a full frame f2 2.8, 42 millimeter f2.8. Look how small that is. So what I was saying earlier about, you know, there's an inverse relationship between lens quality and the size of the lens. This lens doesn't have autofocus. It doesn't have focus at all, actually. It has like zone focus, right? Like 3 feet, 10 feet, something like that. Very, very simple. But I guarantee if I were to put, if you put this lens on the L10, for example, oh, this is a nice, I love this little camera. I feel like going out and shooting some film. Okay. That would be interesting, but there would probably definitely be no IBIS, and it would, that would be the main thing, right? No IBIS. But a fixed 15 millimeter, that's an interesting focal length. It's not bad. I like 15 millimeters. Said I had an FL700. Yep, that was a good flash. What's nice about the FLs, I assume it's the FL700WR, they're weather sealed, and that can come in handy for macro photography, because a lot of times you're out in the rain and you can get some nice macros with raindrops and stuff. That said, should make top-end lenses, make lower end for entry level. Can you imagine how good those lenses could have been? I've lost the thread on that conversation. I'm not sure what we were talking about anymore. On the weight of lenses, I hate my 200 to 500 Nikon, but the lens sitting down in one spot is so much fun if you're not walking around. Yes, That's a great lens. Nikon makes great lenses. And Darko says, my Ollie Trip 35 had the kind of zone system. Yeah. It's okay. I mean, I got pictures with it that were fine. You know, it's film, right? How sharp are they going to be anyway? But anywho, okay, so we're all caught up, and I've been here, gosh, forever. And there's not many people left anyway. That's how my streams go. But I hope all of you will join me tomorrow, okay, with the OM System Ambassadors, because it's always a treat when I have guests. And I'm going to try and get more guests onto my streams in the future. So look forward to that. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Thank you for all the well wishes for my mom. I greatly appreciate that. And also I appreciate all of the donations and support that you guys give, both, you know, through the donation links, but also just being here and coming together as a community. I really appreciate it. So you guys have a good day. Try to do that every day and you'll have a good life, right? So eat healthy and exercise. And I hope to see you all again tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If not then, hopefully soon. So thanks again. You guys have